All right, what is up, guys? Evan Aldo here. I am here with CVO Crypto for our semi monthly or whatever we do, the analysis and everything. Said a lot of good analysis, good predictions. Especially, I remember one of them. Yeah, you've been spot on every time I've had you on. I think I'm trying to think if there's been anything that you didn't get right. I mean, I remember back in August, you predicted that August dropped down or around there, or ETH to 2000. You predicted our recovery last, September, that area, and you got that right. So you've gotten pretty much everything right. I'm trying to think nobody's right 100% of the time, but
No, yeah,
generally,
and
yeah.
that's the thing too, is like, I'm always willing to adapt too, you know what I mean? Like I did anticipate actually Bitcoin going down a little bit further than it did. Granted, still looking for a pullback. Back in August time, I was looking for like 43K, but 48
Sure.
is kind of where we hit the brakes. But Ethereum was really the reason that I, shifted that outlook to, identifying that on top of just the structure to start putting in place. But yeah, it's been a fun time, man. And I think the last time we talked, I can't remember really when it was. Like you said, maybe it was like October time, right before the election. Trump getting reelected was a big piece of my housing market outlook. So that was that the housing market analysis, I think, is still very much intact, and that we're pretty much in the end game. I've been kind of noting of all markets, including crypto, and the 4-year cycle, I think, is a big thing right now that I think we may see, whether or not we're going to see it, come to fruition again this time around, where this year is kind of that tipping point, for the crypto market, or my stance on that is that, I think that we'll actually break that this time around. And then the markets, including crypto, might see a continued move through, the next 24, 36 months.
Really?
Interesting.
Okay, so
Yeah.
24 to that would be up until 27, 28, 2027, 28, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I'd say more so 18 to 36 months, I guess. I'd put it in that kind of realm. So a year and a half to 3 years, kind of window. But once again, not married to anything, just kind of taking the data as it comes. But that's just still kind of been my higher outlook as of the last few years specifically. But,
and you think that, what's the reasoning behind like extended cycle this time for the first time ever? Because of Trump, because of any?
No, not necessarily. So like my idea has been that, with crypto specifically, and I used to be a huge 4-year cycle guy as well, just because that's all we have. And realistically, it's not broken yet. So, there's been things that I think have kind of shifted away from, depending on if you got a bullet point list of what the 4-year cycle, entails, a big piece of that probably was, no new all-time high before the halving. The halving dictates a lot of that as well. And things like that, I think we've started to see kind of some pieces come around. But the thing for me is that I think that crypto is truly building out the first 18 to 20-year cycle that ever, alongside the housing market, which the housing market cycle essentially restarted in 2011, 2012. You could look at it as 2008, as depends on how you want to look at it. For me,
The
I
bottom,
really
I think, for a lot of places was 2011, 2012. So yeah, I would agree with you.
That's
Yeah, around
kind of
there.
where I view it, and that's kind of when we could, that's really when the first data points come in for crypto. Really, like after the initial launch of Bitcoin in 2009, you can look there. Obviously, there's pennies what Bitcoin was worth, but when really like viewing some of the data, like it comes in heavily from like 2011 and on. But that's kind of just my reasoning behind that, and just something I guess I'm keeping in mind. Once again, I'm not like the 4-year cycle is definitely not a thing, and just another thing around that reasoning at this point too, why I could see that not completing the way that it always kind of has, is that when you view people coming into this market, we always kind of like joke around about like crypto Twitter, being like the gauge in sentiment. I would argue that Facebook is honestly like my number one go-to place when I want to gauge true blue, when you get those texts from your friends in high school, or people that you knew in high school that, they want to come in and buy when basically the market's topping, it's like, oh, is it a good time to get Doge? Is it a good time?
You're talking about people posting on Facebook? What on Facebook are you?
Well, on Facebook in general, like, crypto groups, like communities, like there's always like,
I didn't even know that was a thing on Facebook.
Man,
I don't even go on it.
It's a ton, man. I'm in one. I just joined it years and years ago. Like, 2017, I probably joined it. So I mean, they've been around for a long time, and it's just where most people can go and it's an easy access point. Like a lot of people, like the average person, I'd say it's kind of a hard piece, because I think a lot of people do use Twitter at this point, but I think a lot of people also just, like the average person that's just living their life, is on Facebook for sure. But anyways, I gauge that a little bit, because anytime I see somebody, recently come in, it's been like, hey, everybody, I'm brand new to the market. I know that this year is going to be the final year of the 4-year cycle, and all the altcoins are supposed to pump in 50x and 100x. I'm looking for the, what altcoins am I supposed to buy? And it's like that mindset is like, anybody walking into the market has got that for some reason,
So
I
that's
don't know.
what you're seeing a lot of right now on Facebook.
Yeah,
Then
and I've been seeing it for like probably the last few months
so that
heavily.
means we're going to crash, right? Or
No, I just like, like anything else, when everybody's when the echo chamber has got the same
okay.
idea, it's just something that I'm, just kind of paying attention for, because I don't know, it just would make sense to kind of breach away from that. But once again, yet to be seen, and really it's the housing market thing. The sentiment thing is, at times everybody is right at also, at times too. So not something I'm like, jumping on a grenade over, but yeah, it's just something that the housing market cycle for me is just a really big piece that I'd be interested to see how everything plays out.
So yeah, two things on that. I know you mentioned that's kind of the 20-year cycle, and we've talked about it before. Basically, if you see that starting in 2011, that was kind of the first. 2011 is when kind of the first people who weren't like super, connected with how Finley or whatever the hell actually found out about Bitcoin. I would say that was the first little peak there, where the general public kind of heard about it a little bit. That was
Mhm.
also kind of the bottom for a lot of the US housing market around 2011, 2012. Talking about that 20-year cycle, does that mean, and I think it probably does that mean we'll probably see a peak in the housing market, a peak in the S&P 500, a peak in crypto around 2030, 2031, maybe 2032? Is that where you're getting at?
Yeah, I mean, it could be that time frame more so. Like I can pull this up actually, because I updated this just for
Yeah,
our little
please.
thing here. But for anybody that hasn't seen the outlook of this from just the two of us talking
Mhm.
about it over the last few times or whatever, I made this really clean setup. I think it is, at least. And this is, essentially the housing market cycle. And I, came across this from a gentleman named Phil Anderson. He wrote a book called The Secrets of Real Estate and Banking. There was another piece that like really drove me to like finding and like analyzing this kind of stuff back in 2012. I came like one of the first YouTube videos I ever saw, which at that point was like watching a VHS, was this guy on a napkin, and he drew basically out this same setup right here
Mm.
throughout the years and everything like that. And like one of the biggest pieces he ever said was, if you don't own a home by 2016, the next best time is not going to be till like 2035.
So we should
And
sell right now based on that. We should sell.
you could. I mean, I think we still have a few more years though
I
of
think so too. I
upside,
think so too.
right?
Yeah.
So like, and that's what it is. But like, when he said that, it was 2012, so I had that like in the back of my mind. Obviously, I was not super involved in the markets at that time. I remember getting, I basically got married around 2016, and I remember
Okay.
talking to the wife. I was like, do we pay for our wedding, or do we just buy a house? Looking back, I wish we would have bought an extra house. And
Mm.
just kidding. But yeah, so that time frame came. 2016, 2017, at least in Florida, right? Like the average home around me was like 150, 180, 30-year mortgages, 0% interest rates. I mean, you're looking at like $1,200, $1,400 for mortgage.
Mm.
Really nothing crazy. And that was just the average home, right? And we had that luxury throughout this whole period. Obviously, we just came off the back of 2008, housing market drawdown.
Mm.
But
Zero interest rates too. Very low interest rates. Yeah.
yeah, and then of course 2020 comes around, and I think everybody got really frightened at that point, during that first, drop. People
Yeah.
sold their homes. Granted, like you could still sell for like, decent, 100,000 over, probably the asking price and stuff like that. So everybody that bought a
Yeah.
home in like even this short period of time was immediately up in equity. And I saw a lot of people actually end up selling their homes and get an apartment around 2020 and sitting on 100,000 extra dollars, right? They were like, oh, I'm just going to wait for the housing market to crash and then I'll buy back in. Well, 5 years later, the housing market is nowhere near crashing. And I mean, it's got a pullback, don't get me wrong, but it
It's
also
been
went strong.
stagnant. I mean, Florida, I was gonna ask you, sorry to, like, interrupt, but I mean,
Yeah,
Florida has been very sideways past 2 years in a lot of places. I mean, they're technically up, but when you factor in those high interest rates and all that, like, it really isn't up in the past 2 years, in my opinion,
right.
but
but it's not down, so like that's the thing, right? It's like kind of
Right.
holding. And one of the biggest questions anybody when I present this idea and is always like, well, how can the housing market keep going up? Is that going to mean like every home is going to be $1 million? I don't think it's necessarily going to look like that. I feel like it'll just
Mm.
be one of those things where it just doesn't go down enough to where like everybody really wants, right? Like until the
Mm.
crash. Where like, right now the average home, the same home that was 150, 180 right here is now 450, 500 in my area, right?
Insane. Yeah.
Which,
Insane.
and I mean, that's for a shitter, man. Like you're talking like literally, the the bottom of the barrel type of home, man. Like you don't want it, like, you know what I mean? And then you got to, rent. I mean, it's just it's mind blowing.
Yeah. No,
So
it's
and
depressing.
so
Yeah.
it's just one of those things where like anybody that wants to buy a home, I think that interest rates will start coming down. I think we're going to get hit with the old similar to like the Big Short, when homeboy goes into the strip club and the stripper's like, I got 4 properties, because it's like no down payments or whatever. I can't remember what it was, but like something along those
Yeah, I
lines where people,
remember. Yeah, yeah. That's Steve Carell in The Big Short. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. The thing is, those strippers, they make a lot of money, though. I mean, they can afford it typically, but
Right. But I'm just saying, like, just in general, people like
yeah,
right
yeah.
now, I feel like you got, if somebody wants to buy a home, it's really hard. They might have been waiting for years already. We'll probably get to a point where it'll seem like it'll never come down. People will finally pull the trigger towards the high when you probably get a little bit of an interest rate pullback. So it looks like some sort of a deal. You'll have like one, I
Yeah.
saw Zillow offering or thinking about offering like 1% down payments at some point. I think that'll be a big trigger. You know what I mean? Because once again, I mean, if it's a $500,000 home, 1%, it's still a pretty decent little chunk. But that's
You could
probably what.
probably, with closing costs, what do you think you could get that for with 1% down? Probably 30 grand, some
Yeah, I
40,
mean, probably
something like
less than
that.
that even. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I also see a big piece of the housing market, being um, with the multiple home thing, right? Like I feel like the Airbnb situation is also like going to cause I don't know how. I just see that as something that's going to cause harm at some point, because everybody, even I know, their big thing is like, I want to buy all these properties, as much as I can, or if I have the ability, and I want to just rent them out Airbnb. And it's like, that just seems, it could be great, and I know it's prosperous for many people, but buying those homes at these prices, and it's like, if we get to a point when rent and stuff go way down, because right now mortgages are 3 to 5 grand, and if years from now everything gets beat back down, anybody that's got those Airbnb prices are going to be hurting, I think. But anyways, to cover
Yeah.
this like chart idea, just for anybody, just to understand what it is here, all these years and all this and all that. It's a simple idea that 7 to 10, you get an overall 18 to 20 year cycle, and this is housing. But realistically, I mean, that's going to be, married into the stock market and now crypto, I believe. All markets are going to obviously go together. But generally, you
Mm.
get this 7 to 10 year run up. You get this mid cycle slowdown right here in this like 2 to 4 year period, generally initiated by a black swan event, right? So everybody's really panicked, fearful. There's uncertainty, and then at the end of that 2 to 4 year window, it always ends the same. It's high interest rates, high inflation, and everyone expects a recession to come, right? And then you get this basically a face melting rally to the upside, to a blow off top
Mm.
scenario. And it's multiple years. This isn't just like a few months. And then in these, few iterations I have here, it's in 1955, give or take. You started up, so in the 50s, right, 60s, you run up to 61, which was the Cuban Missile Crisis. A couple years go by, high inflation, high interest rates. Everybody expected a recession. Runs up to
Mm. Yep.
1972. You get a few years of downturn, kind of bottom out. 75, we restarted again. 81, mid-cycle time. Black Swan event was the Gulf War. 2 to 4 years, high interest rates, high inflation. Everybody expects a recession. Runs up to 1989. Now, you and I are probably around the same age, right? So for those two, I wasn't even born yet.
Yeah, yeah.
And for these next two, I feel like most people will, have lived through them, or at least, remember these time frames. And 1993, we began the third iteration here. And you can take this back and back and back almost every 20 years, man. It's wild. Runs up 7 to 10 years, 2001, couple versions that you could look at. The biggest one of note is going to be 9/11. 2 to
Mm.
3 years went by, basically 3 instead of 4. And you had, high inflation, high interest rates. Everybody expected a
That was a
recession.
recession. That was a real
Right.
recession. Yeah. Yeah.
But then you got, and I say that just in the general over theme, like everybody thinks it's going to keep getting worse, right?
Yeah.
And then you got
Well, I
5
mean,
years,
COVID was
give
a
or take.
recession too, technically. COVID was a recession. We just printed
Yeah,
money up the wazoo. Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
agree. It was short term, but for sure. And, we ran it up from 03 to, really 07-ish was kind of the top at 08. I think we can all agree and remember that 08 was that, the housing market top last. So now we're 20 years later, just about, right? We're 15-ish, give or take. Right now, right? So we restarted 2011, I'd say off the bottom here. You get 7 to 10 years up. And honestly, and during this time, I was really watching for this because I've been seeing, how if this was truly going to unfold. Obviously, you got to take the data and the information as it comes. I honestly thought that the mid-cycle slowdown, this black swan event type of deal in the 2 to 4 years was going to come in 2018 at first, because there was so much tension between us and the country that was shooting off some rockets at the time. We were kind of going back and forth for.
We're not allowed to mention the name of that country, or
I don't know. Sometimes people always ask me to not say certain things on their stream.
Okay.
So
sure. All right. You got.
I forget that. I forget that. I forget that I'm with the king.
As long as the stream doesn't get taken down or censored or whatever. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So Trump and Kim Jong-un obviously were having issues at 2018, and we did get a little bit of a pullback in the market, and that was actually the low for crypto back then. Even it was the 3K bottom.
I think that was a red year for S&P 500 and NASDAQ as well, right?
I think it was too. Yeah. So
that was
it just wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. So it was just that little bit. And then it went a little bit further, but still overall 7 to 10 years up, you get the black swan event 2020, right? 2 to 4 years of, even though the market still had, new highs and everything like that. If you really look back at basically 2020 to 2023, which was, I think, one of the times you and I came on as well. You and I were on Debate Crypto at the time. 9/11 of 2023, right before everything exploded, right? And the sentiment then, even I remember, one of the guys on there, Miguel, I think, was like, I just don't see how anything is bullish right now. It's just everybody was just thinking that everything was just about to roll over. 2024 was going to be this huge, recession, crash in the markets. So obviously, and also, what did we have then? We had high inflation. Interest rates hadn't started coming down yet, and everybody expected continued recession at that point, right? Everybody thought the market would crash and roll over. And then ever since then, what have we had? Just nothing but upside. Nvidia, S&P, all indices, crypto,
everything,
housing market,
everything except altcoins.
Except for the altcoins, yes. And
I want to touch except for the altcoins we hold.
Yeah. No, it's a random side note here is that, granted, yes, there's been opportunities to buy and sell along the way, but one of my biggest purchases, my first purchase ever was Litecoin back in 2017 in January. And the only reason was for the same reason like anybody else coming in new. I didn't know anything about this market. There was no education. There was nothing yet, right? We were a few years in, and that was truly the biggest bull run. But it was January that year. I got in, I bought Litecoin because it was $3, just because it was the cheapest. I could get the most bang for my buck. That was it. Bitcoin that same day was $500 or $600. Ethereum was $20, and I chose Litecoin. And by the end of that year, it was a decent idea and a purchase at that time, right? Because it 100x basically went from 3 to 300, maybe 400 that year. But obviously, it's come back down. It's gone back up. It's come back down. And now, looking back, people always say had you bought Bitcoin or had you dollar cost averages into Bitcoin over the years, the same, X amount that I put into, Litecoin that day, if I would have just dropped it in Bitcoin and just done nothing else over the last several years, it would probably
be 5x of what your return was with Litecoin. They're 10x. Right? Yeah, it's down 90% against Bitcoin. Probably 10x of that.
Right. Yeah. It was just an interesting thing to see.
You turned it into $100,000, you'd have $1 million probably. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, my thing right now is there anything that you're looking at, waiting for? I know you mentioned potentially 1% down payments on homes. What signs? You said lower interest rates. Are there any other signs that you're looking? Say we're in the year 2028 or 2029 or 2030, and things are still generally going up. Are there any signs in those years that you're going to be looking at where you're like, okay, now is my chance to take the money and run?
Yeah, it's a tough one, right? So I don't know. At the end of the day, I don't know which way the market's going to go. This is something where I'm, when you look at somebody like Warren Buffett, by no means am I comparing myself to him, but he's been sliding out of the market since 2020, right? We had this,
Mm.
and when you think of this, like everybody looks at him and looked at him even here, right? Like he sold off some things and he's sitting on cash and he never really reallocated that, even though the markets exploded after the fact. However, this guy wasn't buying here, but he probably was buying here, right? So he's, DCing, scaling out of the market, so to speak, on this like run
Mm.
up here. And for me, that's kind of my idea as well. Like assuming that this comes to fruition, like I said, I don't know. I'm not willing to take the bet that we just continue only up forever. In this
Mm.
time period. So, and on top of that, we have the 100-year cyclical anniversary of the Great Depression in 2029. So the fact that the end of this next window here is around 2026 to 2029, maybe it's 2030, maybe it's 2031, like you said, right? Like this is high time frame
Mm.
outlook
Yeah.
here that are averages that could skew, a few years, which is a big window. And we all know that those blow off tops, the last few bits of it are the most, explosive. So if you miss something by a year, you might, really miss like a 10x opportunity or something like that. But overall, for me, I think that
Mm.
I'm just going to be really cautious in the next, 18 to 36 months is kind of like the time frame. When you break it down like that, it doesn't sound that long. When you say a year and a half to 3 years, obviously that
Yeah, that's really
it,
soon. Yeah.
it seems, yeah, whatever. So it's like, that's kind of my strategy, is to probably just scale out. And for me personally, I do view this type of event, if we do see something like this happen where the markets all do top, for a similar situation like we've seen every 20 years. This is the type of thing that, maybe we don't make a new all-time high in crypto or Bitcoin for 10 years, like one of those, like how everybody, like some
That's
of
what I
those
think.
large
Yeah.
analysts, like, we're kind of anticipating that from the last run. I do see a world where something like that occurs. I see the world where the .com bubble hits for all the altcoins, and they do go to we have 30 million altcoins now. I have to imagine that majority of them will go to zero, right? They're gonna, all close doors, just like
The
all
thing
the
with that,
websites.
let me just ask you, how are we
Sure.
like 30 million altcoins? Like they're listing stuff with a market cap of 10 grand, I feel like,
I
right?
know.
Like that's
Yeah.
not like, I feel like if you, how many altcoins, you probably, I have no idea, but how many altcoins do you think would have a market cap of over 100 million? I mean, it's only a few thousand, right? It's only,
Yeah, if that. Yeah.
yeah, this is just, they're just listing everything just to make money. It's got to be a money type. Yeah, like these exchanges will list anything because Gary Gensler's out now. There's less regulation. The SEC doesn't care as much. The president
Right.
has his own damn meme coin. Like you can get away with it more. That's probably part
And
of the
that
reason.
that that
Yeah.
alone, man, I feel like that's a dangerous. That just opened up the doors, right? Because like
Oh
for
yeah.
even like the last year and a half, I've seen people I know, like not that I know, like long-term friends of mine, but like creators, right? Like yourself, you and I,
Mm,
we never met in person, but I know, we do these. I
yeah.
watch your content, I follow your things. Other creators that I've like worked with in the past or just know of and stuff, like I've seen them like launching, their own crypto coins, meme coins, essentially. And generally, it's like NFTs at this point, but generally, it's not going to end well, I have to imagine. But there was such worry for some people to be like, I'm not doing that because, like, I don't want to go to prison. I don't want the SEC rolling up at my door. But then now the whole idea of that has shifted, because it's like, well, if the president can do it, I can do it. I'm not worried now. And now you just have everybody, man, just hitting the gas on just, Solana shitters. And it is mind blowing, man. It is truly crazy. And I think every day there's a million coins getting dropped every day, as far as like on, the Solana chain and stuff like that. So, and what's crazy to think is, like, in 2017, at the end of the bull run at 20K Bitcoin,
Mm,
we only had 2,000 coins at the time, 2,000 altcoins, right? And at the end of 2021, we only had 20, and I say only, even then was a lot,
mm.
20,000 projects. Now you have literally, it's just, exponentially blowing up. Like you said, like I said earlier, we weren't around during like .com eras and stuff, in the sense of like paying attention to the market. Obviously we were probably, 10 years old or something. But when I look around, man, it's just like, dude, this is like insane. Like, you and I could list a coin on this stream right now, if we wanted to. And that's just the craziness of this market right now.
It's oversaturated. I mean, I think it's going to die out a little bit, but there's always been that meme culture in crypto. I mean, I know Ben Cowan used to mention back in like 2012, 2013, there was barbecue token. That was kind of the original meme coin, BBQ. There was
Mm-hmm.
always that situation, but now it's gotten so out of hand. But I think we'll keep seeing that until you get like regulation that stops people from doing it. I think it'll kind of die out a little bit, kind of how we saw like the meme stocks have died out, I think, right? Like GameStop, AMC, that's not relevant like it used to be. Um,
Right.
that's kind of done. So I think it'll eventually die out, but I think like you mentioned, until we get that next depression, the next major crash where it's like a decade of sideways, a decade of nothing too significant, that's probably when we'll really reset there. Now,
Yeah.
as you mentioned, and as most people are aware, the 100-year anniversary of the Great Depression is in 2029. My guess is that we're not going to see a crash in that exact year, that exact 2029, because it's too easy. It's too obvious. Like it never repeats exactly. I mean, the 4-year
Right.
cycle kind of does for Bitcoin, but even then, it's not exactly. Um, if you had a guess, do you think that big crash will happen before 2029 or after? Like, do you think it's more likely to happen in 2028, 2027, or more likely to take until 2030 or 2031?
Hmm.
My guess is it's going to take a little bit longer, maybe 2030, 2031. I don't know. I'm kind of just pulling this out of my ass. I don't really know.
Yeah. The one thing, like just when looking at like a psychological idea, is that I would imagine it doesn't happen under Trump, right? So like
Yeah.
that is the only like reason I think that, just from the sense of like I think he's going to go down as you know, on paper or whatever, like as the hero, right? Even all the way up to 2020, booming economy. He was gone 2020, 24, everything, you know, shit hit the fan. He comes back 2024 to 2028. That's always kind of been my
Mhm.
idea set, that like he would be reelected at, you know, for the time period more than anything. Like, I was just like, I could just see the writing on the wall, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
22, and because of this last stint in the housing market, assuming that it would run up to like 2028, 2029. But realistically on the charts, like for crypto and stuff too, I even see like there's a lot of things coming in, you know, around like 15 months from now. So one big piece of that is actually going to be, I'll take a look at it if we have time, is the ETH versus BTC chart, which is, you know, probably the leading altcoin season, you know, type
Yeah.
of chart that we all
How
look
about
to.
you? I know you had some good stuff on Twitter. If you want to share that and show us now, I'm sure everybody wants to see that.
Sure. But yeah, I mean, I would say probably it's going to be before
Okay.
the 23rd. But, you know, like you said, like I could see it going to 2030, 2031. I think in the past, I even looked up something with the Dow Jones that had some like interesting like cycle analysis around like a 17-year cycle too on the Dow Jones, and
Interesting.
I think it like ended around like 2031. So like only because you just said that, it just reminded me of that. But yeah, I'll hold the ETH
Mm,
versus BTC up. Actually, yeah, I wanted to share.
let's see. I got
So
it. Okay.
a couple things here, right? So Bitcoin's currently trading like 95,000, just teetering, and if we get a pullback in, you know, Bitcoin, we all know how that goes down with the altcoins most times, right? Bitcoin sneezes, the alts catch cold, type of deal,
Mm,
where they just feel like, you know, 10% drop in Bitcoin, and even just as recent, we saw, I think it was only 9% pullback from Bitcoin like 2 weeks ago, and then alts
mm.
dropped literally 40 to 50 to 70%.
That was
Um,
depressing. Yeah, yeah.
it was wild, man. And so the ETH versus BTC pair, for anybody, you know, this is not by, you know, this is generally just Ethereum, right? We're looking at Ethereum against Bitcoin's price. Usually when this chart is going up, we're in the middle of an alt season. You know, generally Ethereum
Mm,
goes up, the altcoins as a whole go up. But realistically, you know, if you want to truly look at probably like an alt season where like all the altcoins, if you want to analyze that, like, you know, the others charts, the total two, stuff like that is probably what you really want to look to. But the ETH versus BTC one has really got my attention here. And for about a year and a half, I've been tracking this potential harmonic pattern, which is a sequence of Fibonacci that has a very specific set of rules on completion zones, and then there's specific targets and all these things, right? And they're derived off of, like, really, I mean, Fibonacci in general is derived off of human emotion. So you have this huge move up, and then we've essentially retraced almost 100%, right? And the pattern I'm talking
mm.
about is called this is actually a bullish pattern, And you can see where I started. I threw this like random, not random, but I threw this, little direction here all the way back in September. But realistically, like I said, we were looking at this from November, basically right after the video stream we did last year.
Yeah. Okay.
But overall, this is a huge bullish reversal pattern. And when you're looking at this is on a monthly time frame, by the way. So every candle is a month long. This bottom here was in 2019, and now this took 6 years, just about, right, 5.5, to complete. So with that being said, generally, like anything else, right, when you're looking at multi-month bull flags or falling wedges or head and shoulders, right, if it's something that takes this long to kind of generate, usually the unwinding is let's just say half that time. So for me, this is kind of what I'm looking at here. Granted, we could still see 4-year cycles in between, I suppose. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean everything has to go straight up. But if we start to see this, region start to break out of here, and I have these 2 levels right here because I actually was able to time this out with fib time, that I was looking for a bottom of this pattern to come in between December of 2024 and March of 2025. So interesting enough, we actually came down to a perfect completion zone in that realm of time. So yet to be seen if it is the bottom. I'm not trying to be a bottom caller, but if there's ever a time, in my opinion, to be interested in altcoins since 2019, it would be right now, right? And even though we could see another 40% pullback, and like that's just like a normal occurrence at this point, for altcoins that we're all used to, but I foresee that this is going to be, I put on Twitter that this was a 6 to 8 month alt season basically loading here. Realistically, this is about an 18 month to 36 month unwind that I could see happening basically. And while I'm here with you, right, let's just go ahead and unveil it. So this is the overall analysis here.
Oh, okay.
And it lines up really interesting with, let's just block off some of this just to clean it up, with the housing market. Right. So once again, all these things here are kind of derived off of certain, one is the, let's pull that back here. Sorry. Okay. Wasn't ready to show it to the pub.
Oh, wow. Appreciate you showing it on it.
Yeah, dude. Well, this is the thing, right? Like people get really, once again, I'm not trying to say that this is the absolute bottom, but this is something that I've been working on for, a little bit of time here. And it's like that. Interesting. All right, 1 second here. Okay. Anyways, and a couple things, right? So once again, looking at this, major bullish pattern, 6-year long bullish reversal, may take 1.5 years to 3 to hit the target. The target of this is back to the 382 and the gold pocket, basically, of the overall move here. Sorry, I don't know why it's a little odd here. I'll just pull it new. So I'm just getting that from literally the high that we put in back in like 2021. Let's just assume that the low is in right now. We're going to throw on the 382, right? And that's what these box target areas are kind of derived off over here. And I don't know why it's, anyways. So the move here would be that the target of this is back to the 382, which is basically this B point, which is essentially also, if you were to turn off, just take this off, that would be the most realistic or the most assumed in anyways, right? Back up to the previous support that broke, and now you got resistance, so on. The 382 literally lines up right with that spot. It's the B point of the harmonic pattern, which is a major target as well. So just as confluence in this region here. Probably get a pullback once again. We saw this move right here, this like 20% drop in ETH versus BTC just the other day. This was the February whatever wick down crash that we saw everything just like completely melt. It was only 26. Yeah, and that was only a 26% move, right? So when I put these percentages up here, this to get to the first target, that's a 70 to 90% increase in ETH versus BTC. If we saw that type of move, 50 to 70% drawdown on a 20% move to the downside, what does a 70 to 90% move look like to the upside? What is the 130 to 160? What is the 150 to 190? These are the major targets here that I do see us getting to over time. And to put it into perspective, the last altcoin season we truly had was probably November of 2023 to March of 2024, when Bitcoin went from 30 to 70. And that was only about a 26 to 30. It was right here, basically. It was only about a 26 to 30% move in ETH versus BTC. So to see these type of numbers here, once again, I know that this doesn't necessarily monitor the whole altcoin market. This is truly looking at Ethereum. I'm sorry. But, if Ethereum is going to see an increase like this, potentially, I think that the altcoins are going to definitely follow with it. I think that this, in my opinion, we could see something, like I said, this time frame here is, once again, 18 to 36 month window for this to kind of unfold. Gives us a window like December 2026 to November of 2028, which November of 2028 is interesting to me because, once again, at that point, what happens? Trump is out, right? No matter what, he ain't getting elected again.
That's a halving year, right? I think that's a halving year. Yeah, that's a halving year.
Is it? Okay.
I think, if it was 2024, the next one would be 4 years later, I think.
Right.
Right? Yeah.
True. Yeah. In the halving cycle. So yeah, that'd be probably
Trump
earlier
would be leaving. He would be leaving in 2029, technically, I think, in the beginning of 29. Yeah.
But I'm just spitballing.
But some people think he's going to stay in until he dies. Some people think he's there forever.
he might be, man.
I don't think so.
But so this is just an interesting idea here. Like, once again, I'm not married to it. I'm not saying for everybody to, hold on to, like, obviously they don't want this to become a bag holding idea, where it's like, oh, I'm going to hold everything for 3 years because, CBO said that the alts were about to run for that long. I'll still be selling along the way. And once again, Buffett style, right? Like, where I'll be offloading, selling into strength. You got to think of it like that. You might not sell the exact high, but you don't want to be holding while it gets, that pullback. So to me, I'm always concerned with just how much I can make and not how much more it can go. Right. Like, so, at least that's the goal to some degree. But yeah, so I think that we're sitting here, and then once again, the 2026 to 2029, which targets of this pattern, line up with that 2026 to 2029 housing market cycle top idea. It's a big window. I know that, right? It's 3 years, just about 2 years, I guess, in this sense. But I could just when I'm looking at everything kind of like piling into this next couple of years here. And once again, we've been looking at this housing market unfold. I mean, almost to the T over the last few years specifically now. This is kind of the way I see it. And like I said, I look at the fact that we're like in an end game, so to speak, for Bitcoin dominance, which means that the altcoin season, the altcoin rally could be, on its way. Was this the bottom? Doesn't necessarily know. We could realistically go all the way back to this X point, which is, basically the overall low from like 2019. And this is still a valid setup. Right. So it could go a little lower, but in the sense of timing, I made a big video to my community, privately, that was like, I managed to successfully maneuver through this market really well over the last few dips, like the big crashes, the FTX crash back in, 2022, where we were looking for the bottom of the market potentially around December or November 8th. But also, like, Doge put up this really bearish pattern that I was like, man, if Doge is about to hit this, everything probably going to come with it. I know that sounds random, but at the time, like, that was a big, that was a big
coin,
piece,
yeah,
right?
It's a top 10, yeah.
And it did, like, so, everything crashed, and it was the FTX crash that came next, right? It was really crazy. Last year, I identified a pretty, we were talking about Ethereum last year that had a pretty big bearish pattern with a 50% pullback from 4K when all the news and everything around us was so, exciting. Was able to, I ended up selling out, not at the exact high, but I sold out almost all my positions with the idea to basically double my positions and buy back on a 50% retrace. And
I remember when you told me about this. You were telling me about. I remember I had you on for this. I think this was in 2024, right, or the beginning of, or what year was this?
Yeah.
It
was last year.
Yeah. I remember that. It was a good call. Yeah.
And of course, like, I didn't know at the time, obviously, and I don't know this is going to play out. It's just something I'm, picking out here that I don't think anybody else has this type of outlook at the moment, right? So we'll see how it goes, right? I'm not trying to marry it. I'm not trying to put out for anybody to just think that we have a guaranteed 3-year altcoin rally on our hands, but we could see some pretty decent movement here for the next year and a half to potentially 3 years. So, what I was saying though is the time frame, this like 90-day window. So December to March. I took profits and, held and reinvested and did all throughout this time frame, especially since like 2022 to now for like the last 3 years. Things like doubled and tripled my holding, and with the idea more so for like just to increasing my position size, right? Like, I got the day trades and the swing trades and stuff to kind of like make, income, throughout the short term time frame. But the big goal is obviously to build your long term bags, right? So, and by no means am I like swinging my whole portfolio every week on a potential 10% pullback, but those really few, every 6 months we get those really big, retracements. I try to capitalize on them if I can, if something, kind of is showing itself essentially. But I said in this one right here, it was right before that crash 2 weeks. I think the market crashed on Sunday recently, and on Friday, right before, I was like, I anticipated a pullback because Bitcoin specifically put in a bearish pattern right on inauguration day. And I was like, I anticipate we'll probably see, as low as like 86K and whatever. And we were obviously trading like 100,000 at the time, like in this region. It was right before this little drop. And I was like, generally I try to like, take profits on things and like look to buy back. But I was like, during this one little window, this 90-day time frame, I'm just not willing to take the risk, even though, I understand that like there's probably going to be a pullback, pretty heavily. I ended up taking like, I sold a few newer projects, something like I sold out of all my Ondo. I got into Ondo, which I still, and thinking that's going to be a big winner. Sui and a couple others, and XRP was the third one. And
so you're out completely out of XRP right now?
Well, I got back in at literally.
Okay.
At literally almost a low. Like, I mean, wow. Like I have a little bit of buy.
You had a limit order, right? You had a limit order.
Yeah, I sold out, not out of all my spot at the very high. And once again, this is just a coincidence more than anything. Like obviously the TA that I was utilizing at the time and just my strategy just worked out, pretty well. But I ended up accumulating a lot of XRP after I ended up selling everything last year. So like I sold a bunch of things like ETH up almost at 4K and stuff that I was in heavy profit. And I parked a lot of it back in XRP because it hadn't moved yet. So just on the offset chance that the market did keep going without me, I didn't want to buy back into things like higher. So I bought into XRP because it was low around this 41 to 49, 51 cent area. And then scaled out on this move here. And once again, with the idea to increase my holdings, right? Because I do think that XRP is probably on the way to like $5-6 next. But we were coming up. We had the previous all-time high, which some debate, if that was or not. I got this all-time high from the Bitstamp chart. XRP was one of the few things back in the day that you couldn't even trade against dollars, right? You could only trade it against the Bitcoin pair. Wow. So the actual pricing of it, I think, varies due to that. But either way, like this was the all-time high. We had a bearish reversal pattern complete right into that level. A couple of targets, in the mix here. But my biggest one was we completed this and we generated some new high time frame averages because it was a new year. So very likely we came down to them. So I was willing to I got completely out, lower on my spot bags, right at 317 on the short term, just like leverage positions. And I didn't short it, but I had limit orders in for literally 181. And so 179 was the area I was anticipating us to come down to. I didn't think we'd wick there, in seconds. I just figured we'd make our way down to this region. But 181 was where I got the fill on Coinbase. And then if it goes a little bit lower, I'll probably look to get in here. But this was a 50% drop, right? So you're talking able to once again double my position, without having to hold down through this. Granted, once I had to risk, if this was going to continue up, I had to just be ready to be like, all right, well, it's going to go without me, and I find something else, right? So, this next 90 days here, or not the current 90 days, we're in the middle of February. So I think that truly between now and like April will be the beginning of the major move on altcoins. And then even Bitcoin dominance, when that
looks like a blow off top. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's the way it happened was sick, man. So this has been kind of my Bitcoin dominance, chart that I've been going off of for the last 2 years almost. We've been basically just taking the stairs up, right? generally what happens next is we take the elevator down. So hopefully that is what occurs. But and like anything else, granted you can't, like, nobody trades Bitcoin dominance, but you can still build out the chart like in the same fashion. So up in this region, there was some like quarterly areas that I was aware of up here, like 62%, and then we had a trend-based gold pocket right here at like 64. Now last year in November we front ran it just a little bit, which at the end of the day could have been viewed as topping out. I mean, it was only a little bit here; it didn't have to be perfect. But I'd been really monitoring this, especially when we came and we made this like higher low right here. That once again, similar to XRP, looking like it was going to put in that bearish reversal pattern at that high. I had outlined as well the ETH versus BTC chart that we were just looking at, where I was looking for that potential low to come in around December to March. And once again, not married to these things. It's just when they do happen, especially during those time frames, I take that very like heavily as confluence, right? So sometimes these timing things like don't work out, but so far this has been a few that have really lined up. And I was looking for this area to get met when we came and we've completed that BAT on ETH versus BTC. And once again, another harmonic pattern basically was starting to show right here, where at the time, we were looking to see if we were going to see, you had a high and you got your low. And then at the time, everybody was looking for this to be a little lower high, and then we'd kind of break down. But we did generate a new high time frame average, which is similar to like a 200-day or a 50-day. This is the average of price from all of last year, and it does not move. So just like when you're above a 200-day, it's good, and below a 200-day, it's bad. This is, similar situation. So if you're above this, you have to anticipate more upside. Get below it, that's kind of the idea for downside. But yeah, you had a same thing, bearish pattern, completes right into the spot that that I was anticipating, at least. The same exact moment that ETH versus BTC pair hits the bottom completion zone as well. And so far, both of those have been holding. So it's just interesting to see. For anybody that has been in the space or doesn't know, right? Bitcoin dominance is a chart that we want to see go down for altcoins.
Right.
It's been pretty much just a Bitcoin dominated space over the last couple of years here, which we do tend to see, even 4-year cycle theory even as well, right? You get the Bitcoin run first, and then you get the true blue alt seasons. So far we haven't gotten that. So I think that we're set up for that now. I think that short term you might get a little lower high back up towards these regions, maybe hit a local gold pocket type of thing and reject. But overall, I think this is the area where we're gonna, this has been my area I'm looking for, like a multi-month reversal from, and I think that we're there in the beginning stages of it, right? So it's not just gonna be overnight, just like when you look at anything, from a low, you don't really know it's the low or a high until weeks later or months later. But I think we got the making for that right now. I'm interested to hear your opinion on that too.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely. I mean, it's the big thing. Let me show you a chart that's we'll get. You were mentioning others. Let me share my where is it here? Oh, do I not have TradingView open? Give me 1 second. That's what happened there. And yeah, let's open TradingView here. You should be able to see right now. So if we go to others versus Bitcoin, now we're just looking at kind of 4-year cycle here. Let me zoom out a bit. Obviously pretty damn depressing. You come down a ton. You kind of even lost this major area right there. 4-year cycle, this is where it bottomed out here, December of 2020. I mean, really the technical bottom was August of 2019, a little bit different this time, but you had your big bottom in the 4-year cycle end of December of 2020. We're about a month and a half delayed on there, at least a month delayed on there. But 4 years before that, you look at February of 2017. So that point right here, I would argue is pretty significant around the end of February. And that's where if you were asleep right here, a lot of your altcoin season would have if you were asleep for a month, you would have, lost out, missed out on a lot of stuff on the way up until, finally 2018. Now, can that happen here? I think you got a decent shot. I mean, your technicals are not what I'd like to see yet. I'd like to see your money flow come up a little bit more on your 2-week. I'd like to see it still looks depressing on like the 3-week on a few other things. So for the people who are talking about maybe coming down this low, I mean, I can't say I blame them. I can't say I disagree with them, because it's not it just ain't the market that I want to see just yet. You got here, it almost, the betting odds look a little bit higher that you'd come back down to these areas. However, in kind of the 4-year cycle, we'd want to see something happen relatively soon. That kind of comes back to the big question I'm sure a lot of people want to hear from you is, what do we need to wait until the Fed stops quantitative tightening and starts quantitative easing for us to get a true altcoin season? That may not happen for months from now. What's your view on that?
So, in the sense of looking at things in the fundamental aspect, I think that is true. But then again, I feel like once, when I look at the technicals of things, I think we both know that, a random news article can drop right when we're about to get a big pop or a top, right? Like, so I think of like DeepSeek, right? Something random as could be is thought of, to have crashed the market that Monday, that, a couple weeks back.
Yeah.
But, technically, when, at least for myself, I was looking at Bitcoin, I was noting that we were going to see a significant high at 110 to 112, and then a pullback to probably 86. And when you're saying that out loud at the time, it's like, okay, whatever, no big deal. It's $25,000 move. Granted, that's wild to say, but then you start living out that move, and then the news is dropping and all that stuff, right? So, I say all that because when looking at that ETH versus BTC chart, and granted, your others chart and the money flow and things like that are a good thing to point out, because we could still go a little bit lower. But to get that blue altcoin season, I still think it is maybe a few weeks away. So it's like we're kind of in like in my opinion, like a preparation.
You had end of March as where you think.
Yeah, and once again, it's a gauge. But if I was to, like, once again, like I'd almost be jealous of some people walking into the market in March, April of now versus, anybody over the last few years since 2019. If my outlook and my analysis ends up, playing out right, where it's like we're potentially putting in that low for ETH BTC. Once again, the ETH BTC chart doesn't mean altcoins, because obviously that's just Ethereum, which to me, I do think that ETH is about to outperform the market. Like, granted, I know that there's going to be smaller caps that'll 10x and 20x. Obviously, I don't think we'll see Ethereum do that, but for ETH to really push, I think that there's a possible, outcome here where ETH probably pushes to levels that nobody's prepared for. And right now, even if it did start pushing up, you got the really conservative levels, which for all, by and large, definitely you should have that. And don't, myself included, like I've had some high targets in the past that didn't play out. So I'm not trying to get, married to things that could really explode here. But when you look at the performance of ETH over the last few years here, you could just, it's a bottled up, it's ready to go, man. And as far as like, quantitative tightening or quantitative easing to like be the catalyst for that, when's the next FOMC meeting? Top of your head, is there one in March or April?
March. It is. I don't know when in March, but it is March.
All right. Thing that interesting time.
Well, the thing that you probably heard, Trump just said he agreed with Powell sounding more hawkish. Now all of a sudden he's like, we need to lower interest rates because of my tariffs. The question is, who is really in charge? Does Powell, have a stronger stance? Where their CPI report came in a little hot the other day. It's hard to say what's going to happen with that. What do you think the odds are Powell is going to sound less hawkish at the next meeting?
I'm a big contrarian viewpoint person, I guess. So I think that whatever most people are going to be anticipating is, I guess I take that back, because a lot of times like Powell does come out with like, what everybody's anticipating. It's a tough one, man. I think that it's just one of those things. Like if we do get an altcoin season here soon, the news wrapped around it, or whether that be quantitative tightening or easing, coming into play, I think it'll just be a surprise where it'd be like, oh, nobody thought, he was going to, pull back as much as he did in March. We thought this would be later in the year. Great. Altcoins run, right? Like it's just, I feel like it's going to be a surprise more than anything. And March 18th and 19th is a very interesting date to me. So without even knowing the FOMC meeting. So that's very interesting, because my true blue timing of that box window is the 26th of March, which really doesn't mean a lot. it could be weeks off, months off, whatever. But at the moment, it's a really interesting time frame. So yeah, I guess to answer that question, I could see a surprise dropping, and it just be like,
End of
and
quantitative tightening, something like that. You're saying potentially.
something, or we don't, or nothing occurs, like we don't make any shift, and it's like, oh well, that's bullish too, like, and
Mm,
you just get a spark, right? So sometimes the same news catalyst can be used for, or the same news is like, we get a drop or a pop on, CPI. It's like, everybody makes that same article wrap around the price action somehow, if that makes sense, right? So
gotcha.
yeah, I just be paying attention for those things, of course. But for now, it's like, for myself, I try to prepare for these moves and things if they're going to come ahead of time, so that when those news things potentially drop, I'm not frantic, and I'm not, trying to panic buy or panic sell, I guess, into those time frames. So I could see it though being a surprise though, if I am just like thinking out loud.
Yeah, no, definitely. I wanted to show you, you were talking about ETH. I'm really bullish on ETH too. I think there's a good shot. I don't think it's, dead like some people say. I'll show you kind of what my outlook is for the year. Like, I mean, the big place that we just bounced off of our capitulation wick was down to 2100, right here. That's kind of our huge area.
Mhm.
Maybe it goes down a little bit more. I don't really think it's going to go under 2000. If it does go under 2000, that's going to be hella depressing, man. Like, that's not going to be fun. But I think you're going to see some situation like a this type of situation, or at least a this type of situation where you're going to, maybe a little bit more elongated. But into the summer, I could absolutely see a new all-time high, maybe 6,000, between 5 and 6,000, maybe into the summer. Then you usually get your summer lull, your summer pullback. Maybe you retest 4,000, scare off some people. You always seem to have some type of summer, thing in the post halving year, some summer pullback like we saw in, the summer of 21. It's generally what you see. And then maybe one more, probably if you're thinking for your cycle, end a year into hopefully 7K. My max would be maybe 11K at the absolute max, maybe something like that. But that would be almost too optimistic, I think. This area where the spiral line contradicts, contracepts, crosses. I don't know what the hell I'm saying. Contra, obviously.
Contraceptive.
Yeah, yeah, that's not what. Contradiction crosses, I guess crosses. I'm trying to make a more sophisticated word here to sound smarter, but crosses right here, 7,200. It's a big fib level. That's kind of my guess on what you may see, something like that. If my educated guess into the 4-year cycle into the end of the year, kind of that situation. If you're thinking it's going on until January, which is interesting, 2018 it peaked out in January. That's 8,000, low 8,000. So maybe something, um, something like that. What do you think? Do you think that's a reasonable expectation?
Yeah, no, for sure. And for me, I'm not. I gave up my days of the big long term. Trying to hold the idea that like ETH could go to 50K or 40K or 30K, right? So I think that
Mm,
like you're doing here, right? For me, the next major areas that I am looking at is 75 to 8,500. Don't necessarily have a time frame for it, but that's just my next major target area for ETH that I think many would agree to, including yourself right here too.
mm.
And then probably see a pullback around those levels, and if not, obviously when we get to those places, you just have to take the new data, as it's coming to, right? So we don't know what the market's going to look like around those, prices or the conditions. If we even get there, maybe ETH topped out at 4K and we're about to nuke. Who knows? I don't think that though. I'm pretty bullish on ETH, and like I said,
Yeah.
like the ETH BTC pair. I mean, ETH is my largest holding. ETH is my the
Wow.
number
Okay.
one thing I dump everything into.
Wow.
As far as like profits from everything funnels into my ETH position. Um,
Do you stake your
so
ETH? Do you stake it? Just
I
curious.
do a portion, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I was probably one of the first that back in 20 like 18 or 19 when the first like you could do 32 ETH. I think it was like only
Oh,
15,000 to
the
do it.
validator, or
Yeah. So I have that still like
okay.
kind of set up in a sense, and then I don't
You get a
stake
good
like
return, right? What do you get? seven
it's
percent a
pretty,
year or something?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like a little less than that, but it's pretty good. And everything else is just locked up on Ledger. I don't love the idea of everything being kind of exposed.
Sure.
Even
Yeah.
though you do, you can make return off of it, but like FTX was just such a big eye opener to that world, man. Can I show
Yeah,
two
you
things
could
real
show
quick?
anything.
So I wanted to touch on ETH, potentially going under 2K. And as much as I would, and it's going to be kind of derived off this Bitcoin chart for now. But so Bitcoin, I think the next moves here, and just zooming out, right? This is the daily time frame, nice clean chart here, right? Nothing but just simple price action. We've got our run up here, our range that we had last year from 72 high to 48K low, and now we've pretty much been doing a similar situation. What's so interesting about Bitcoin is that it ranges more times than not. We get those impulse moves, whether it's up or down, but for the most part, you get so many just ranging time frames. And for this one, I think there's a lot of fear, and there's a lot of fear back here. There's always going to be fear. I think that every no matter what, if we went to $150,000 Bitcoin tomorrow, it'd be exciting for one day. The very next day, it'd be fearful, right? Because then everybody's afraid that it's going to pull back and it's going to crash the market. Should they sell? Like blah blah blah. And it's just the same thing. Like right now, we're sitting at $95,000 comfortably on Bitcoin, and there's a lot of fear, right? And not even fear. There's actually pain from it. Like it's crushing, the altcoins when we get these pullbacks. So I think that the probably a big question from many right now too, or what's the next move on Bitcoin could look like, or what would it look like, or what key areas, at least for myself, like what would Bitcoin look like to lead the market into altcoin season as well? Because if we do see a major altcoin season over the next few months, Bitcoin's not just going to be, it could be ranging, that'd be awesome, but it ideally won't be crashing, right? So I did have a pretty and once again, I'm taking it level by level. So at the moment, I'm going with, can't be too bearish at support if we come down to it here in a second, which I'm going to cover, which is the one line on the chart that you see there at 86K. After that, it's like, that's my line in the sand pretty much right now. So as long as we're living above this region for the moment, really, I guess you could say 80, but like, I'll just put in a little window of 80 to 86K, very small little percentage. But 86K has remained a big level for me for Bitcoin for a couple reasons, and Confluence just keeps stacking there. So one of the main reasons, or just locally, we'll go locally and then I'll go macro on why 86K is a big level at the moment. So I have this marked out as quarterly pivot of Q1 of 2025. So what this is the average of price from last quarter. It's very likely to be met and revisited this quarter, right? Some 70, 80% hit rates. That will revisit that next average or the previous average in the following session. In this case, session meaning, quarter. So in Q1, we're very likely to come down to 86K. It's been very close to it, several times. And it's just something to be aware of. It's not a guarantee by any means, but it's, when I can see other things lining up with it, it's very interesting. So currently now it's right below all the lows. So as we both know, Bitcoin's good at, two things, right? Taking liquidity, come up for the highs, right? Come down here, come down for the lows, stop out every single person, right? That's trying to long and short. Sure. We see it time and time again, day after day. Even the last few days here, we've actually seen it on the CPI and the PPI, and just Monday. Daily time frame here, this was Monday. You came up, you swept Monday high, you took the Monday low. The next day, you took the Tuesday low, you ran it to the Wednesday high. Next day, you took the Thursday low, you ran it. Like, it's literally day in and day out, the same thing over and over again. But anyway, so the quarterly average here likely to be met in the first quarter of this year. So that's, just keynote number one. Number two, when we made this move right here, right, this swing specifically, it triggered me to, anytime I see this, I'm looking for a harmonic pattern. Anytime I see this W formation or this retrace to like a gold pocket specifically, which I think that's exactly what this was, right? We pushed up right into a gold pocket. You tend to come down and then you look for like a double bottom or anything like that. Well, there exactly was that, right? So this bearish harmonic appeared and was targeting it all the way back from here on the 13th of January with a completion area around 110 to 112. Just basically, you just need to come and take the highs. So we did that, nice and slowly, runs it up, literally on inauguration day, comes up, tags the high, right? Wow. And then ever since, we've just been drifting away. And this pattern has three specific targets. And you'll note that there's no gold pocket support. I don't know why this is not working today. There's no gold pocket support. It's basically of a Fibonacci retracement, the 0.5, which we met over here essentially the first time on the 27th, which is when we dropped down to it. Then we got to push up. And then it's no gold pocket. So you'll see no 618, no 65. It's straight to the 886 once you lose the 0.5, which we did here, which was I think I'd like to say that was like, no, this was DeepSeek. This was tariffs, right? And you get the bounce up here. And we basically just hit our head on the 0.5. So as long as we're living below 99,500, I anticipate the next target, which is the 113, to be met. Note that it sits at $86,000 right on that quarterly average, right below all the lows, right? So I'm anticipating that move to kind of go down here. So that's two key points where looking for us to at least make our way down to this region. I have a target area, once again, just to kind of be wide, in case we wick through it a little bit. But I'll be looking for that area to potentially be where we could kind of get some support and start looking for an actual reversal and maybe a continuation and a break to new all-time highs, right? I know that losing this region and starting, I know when it's wrong, but for me this is such a big area, and we're building out this piece right here. Generally it takes a few weeks to finally hit that last that 113 for that shark pattern, right? And I'll show you a really great example of when we did this last year. So back at $72,000 Bitcoin here, we did the same exact setup, which is somewhere all-time high shark right there. So put it in, and it was weeks. Wow. Yeah, you're talking May to July before it actually hit, right? So it was and you could honestly probably say that we completed it here. So let's just say from June to July, so about a month. You came down 0.5, melted right through to the 886, got a little bounce, hit our head on the 0.5 again as resistance, which we just did recently. And then a few days later, you come down and you effectively meet, the target here, right? So, and then you get the bounce. And at this time, it was just different things going on. But that's just a really good example of one that we did recently. Another thing about this 86K, and I'm painting this picture because I'm looking at, honestly, I'm looking to see if this is going to be where we can come down to sweep the lows one last time and then get that next leg up, which in turn is going to probably, maybe Bitcoin only goes to like 120, 130, a little slower. And I say only, that's, amazing. But where the altcoins just fucking go, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's like the ideal situation is dominance drops, Bitcoin increases, and altcoins would increase, right? So the 86,000 is just a really big key level for me for a few reasons. And then this is probably my favorite, type of thing to outline as well, is that when looking at, really strong impulse moves, right? We see it, time and time again, impulse, get these shallow pullbacks, right? And then you get the continuation. Even this, honestly, was a pretty shallow pullback in the grand scheme of things. Yeah. And then we got the continuation. When we look at Fibonacci retracements, everybody looks for the gold pocket at the 618 or the 786 a lot of times, right? Those are ideal areas to look to. But the one that I pay attention to a lot, you'll see it when I have my gold pockets like pulled up, is that I have the 382 also on there. All right. Yeah. And the 382 specifically because it's just enough to kind of get everybody fearful, get everybody looking lower, right? And then at the end of the day, if you aren't really paying attention for it, that's the area we come down to the most times for continuation from a strong move. And that move could be up or down. Wow. But in this case, it's a really good example here. And, literally like all these moves right here, not going to pull them up individually, but this right here, this pullback was a 382 retracement, then continuation. This was a 382 pullback, then continuation. This was a 382. And then obviously we have the macro here as well. And now if we look at our local price action, and I'm just going to pull it from our nice little 48K low. If you had to guess, where would you say the 382 sits right now?
Probably that area you meant. Yeah. Where you mentioned 85K
right,
or 86K.
Right. Like right in the 86K region. So, we've had so much, fear, excitement, very similar to this range down here. And I just, could see, and this is the thing, I'm not trying to predict it. And I'm not saying like limit order, everything out at 86K and dump it in, but I'm looking to see that area be met and the reaction at the time. And that's what I'll kind of gauge on if we're going to see continuation up or a sizable, more of a downward correction. And honestly, for me, I know many people would look at like 77K, the CME gap, assuming like, this doesn't hold and we start to fall lower. I wouldn't be looking for really anything till probably like 67K.
Really?
Yeah. So
What's wrong
Yeah,
with
and
70K or 72K, the 618? What's wrong with that?
nothing would be wrong with it. I mean, it definitely would be an area that would make sense to, I guess, gold pocket, back test the old high and stuff like that.
Because that's what
For
I
me,
would
I'd
say
be
would be a major freaking area. That's your typical 30% pullback. You know what I mean?
right, right. And like I said, it could be for way I look at things more so on range data. I would say that 67 is probably what we'd hit though if we came that low,
Okay.
which isn't much lower. I mean, you're talking 70 to 67,
Yeah, it's
$3,000,
not.
So,
Yeah, maybe just a
um,
wick down. Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, it's not the end, but that would be kind of the
What the
drop case.
hell would happen with alts if we went down to 67K? Would it be a complete bloodbath? Like, would
I
Cardano
think
be at
so.
defense?
It's funny you say that. So like before that Friday, I'm sorry, before tariffs, I guess, right? The
Yeah.
tariff day. I did anticipate seeing a pullback to 67K on Bitcoin. That's kind of what I was like maybe leaning more towards,
Mm,
because when I looked at the ETH versus BTC pair, I saw that we probably had another 20% drop. And the last time we did that was on August 5th. And obviously everything got nuked. But
mm,
it's interesting now that, yes, I agree. If we did fall to 67K, it would not be great. For altcoins, that would be, like worst case scenario. Like, you're talking, I mean, we saw the 70% pullbacks already as it was, but yeah, it would not be good. So for me now, though, with the way that alts did react and the way that the ETH BTC pair, kind of came to that completion zone, the way that dominance looked like it blow off top, the way that just all kinds of things kind of aligned. And we didn't get that pullback, like a huge one in Bitcoin. Just now it leads me more so to think that we don't come down so far. And I think that that's what gives this like area, like almost a fourth piece. And I say that because I had to do the same evaluation down here, because when we were trading back at,
mm,
this region, I did target lower, 43K. And for multiple reasons, this was the same reason actually I target 67. I targeted
mm.
43 at the time, but I had to take the whole market into consideration. And when ETH came down on this day and met, some key levels, and I looked at the altcoins and how everything else looked, I was like, all right, that might actually be, the low for Bitcoin. And we came down to the 0.382 and we got that bounce. So we have a similar situation now. Bitcoin barely pulled back in comparison. All the alts, completely nuked to huge levels. I do think that there's still a world where they pull back a little bit more. But like I said, in the next couple of months here, I'm really looking to, not be super scared of any drops, and just looking for,
Okay.
any opportunities, or just looking to hold, man. Like, I'll be in the trenches with everybody else if we get another 30 and 40% pullback. But I bring this up because, once again, I'm looking at 86K for Bitcoin. Hope that makes sense why. And then if I look at ETH, we came down to
Mm.
2100, but there is there is a world where we come down a little bit lower, and it's right between. I mean, this would be miserable, like you said, to see.
That's a big range. 19 to see. That's a big
Yeah,
range.
and more so, I'd be looking probably just for like right below the lows, right? Like just like anything else, where like we
Yeah.
see, and you can see how we've just kept them all intact. We've not come down and hit these, and I don't necessarily think we have to, because we definitely got some real big retracements here. I'm not holding my breath for 1900 specifically,
Mm,
but just I wouldn't be concerned if it did hit it. And the only
mm,
reason I could see that, the only reason I'd be even preparing for that, is if I'm looking at Bitcoin to take another drop to 86K, which isn't a lot. It's only like a 9% drop on Bitcoin,
how about
but
check what
the
would the
last
drop
9% was this.
from where we are right now down to, let's say, that point you have 1976? What percentage is it? Okay.
It's
Oh, okay.
25, and like
Okay.
that's not unheard of. To go to
Yeah.
1600 would be deep. That's like 40%. More so, I'm really, like I said, like I'm a buyer.
Yeah.
I got bids in place. I mean, if it goes to 16, that'd be scary and everything like that. But I'm not going to be waiting for that by any means. And once again, it might
Mm.
not even go as low as 19. This might have been it before the
I
next
mean,
leg
that's a
up, right?
big wick. That's a wick and a half right there. That's a hammer candle and a half. That's a
Dude, it's nasty, man.
yeah.
And once again, it was a perfect it was a perfect bearish pattern that completed up here with specific targets,
Mm,
382, gold pocket, and then the C point, which you could see it. That's pretty much where it came through. So Yeah. So, in my opinion, I mean, this very well could, it's a good low for ETH. The only thing I don't love is that we didn't take any of the lows. So that's the only thing that kind of would put me on standby to say, all
There's
right,
probably a
it
lot
might
of
come back
orders. Yeah, there's a
one
lot of
last
orders.
jab. And I guess even looking at it, like you just pointed out, like that's only a 20%. And I say only, but if Bitcoin pulls back 10%, 11%, it wouldn't be out of the ordinary to see ETH come down. So,
Yeah.
and what this is, so similar to like what I'm looking at with Bitcoin on that quarterly average, this is the yearly average. So this is the average price from all of last year for ETH. It's untapped at the moment. So it's likely we hit it this year, but it's not, it doesn't have to be perfect. Doesn't have to be a guarantee. So it's just kind of like, that's just where the stinkiest of bids kind of goes into. But like, looking at everything put together now, you got Bitcoin, sitting at, I think a big key level at 86K. I'm really excited to see how we react if we get there. I think that the ETH versus BTC pair is primed, as we covered pretty much, really early or a lot earlier. One last thing, I guess, since we're just going through all the hot sauce here, if you don't mind, is the DXY.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So the DXY, and shout out to Magic Internet Money, because I'm pretty sure he pointed this out so long ago. So same thing, and I'm not trying to run a harmonics class here, but it's just like they're very interesting to me, and I've implemented them into my strategy a lot over the last few years, and it's been a huge piece of honestly of some of the success points. Somebody just said BitBoy is missing.
I saw that. Is that true? Yeah, I think that's a real thing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it is, or
I
at
hope
least
he's okay.
word on the
Yeah.
street. Yeah. All right. So now we're piecing, in my opinion, the last piece here. So I went over the housing market. Okay. Where we're in my opinion, the blow off top stage, and maybe it's already blown off. Who knows? It's in the realm of this time frame.
Right.
2026, 2029 still kind of remains that like big piece for me. I'm thinking 2027, 2028. I think we front run the Great Depression year. Maybe we, go a little after, like you were saying, at the 30, 31. In general, I'm just kind of, keeping everything at a high level here. And you got the housing market cycle that potentially is coming to a completion here in the next few years. You got the crypto market cycle, in my opinion, that is probably going to be making that first 20-year run too. ETH versus BTC pair showing a potential for an 18, a sizable run. I'm not even going to put a time frame on it, but a run that's longer than most are anticipating right now. And then you got the DXY that put in a 20-year. So when we were looking at ETH versus BTC, that huge bullish reversal that I was showing you, this is a bearish reversal on the DXY that is spanning 20 years to generate. And it completed all the way back here, which was a few years ago already. So this was 2022. So generally, same thing with that 6-year pattern, probably take about 1.5 years to 3 years to unfold. This is a 20-year pattern. Let's just say 5-10 years to unfold, give or take, meet in the middle, 8 years, who knows? And it's already been a few years already, right? And all we've done so far is we've come back up now. So if you take a Fibonacci retracement from the high to the low, you've come right into just, what you want to see on something like this, where you come back for a lower high, right into your gold pocket. You're getting a rejection right now. So this is, so far still looks pretty good for a drop. And the key targets to this overall setup is none of them have been hit. 382 back at 97 cents or 97. There's this box region I just have highly highlighted. It's just a big cluster of key regions. And then you've got the B point, which is basically the bottom level here, the gold pocket. I mean, this is a huge retracement if we come back to it. 86 basically would put us back in the same realm that we were in, 2010-ish, whatever. But yeah, it's just another piece that, just kind of throwing it all on together here. Obviously, this can change. And if we start to, claim some of these regions and you get continuation, then this kind of goes out the window. But at the moment, just how everything is aligning, I still, I could see this kind of unrolling here through 2028, 2029. It's going to take a few more years for this to play out, in which we all, generally understand here is that when the DXY is, going up, it's not generally great for risk assets. When it comes down, usually it is. So just like the
Mm.
dominance chart, we want this chart to, we don't really want, as Americans, I guess you don't really want your dollar value to be going down, but
If you hold a
as,
lot of US dollars, yeah, it wouldn't be.
yeah,
But if
as
you're
an
in the
investor,
TLT,
yeah,
you're okay. I mean,
right.
well, it depends, but yeah.
So that's kind of my overview there. I think that we're in a pretty big spot here. I think that you and I have been discussing this housing market idea probably for years at this point. I think at least two.
Yeah.
So is it?
Well, I was
It'll
going to
be
say
interesting
the
to
housing
see.
market, it's generally been sideways. It's either going to jump up or jump down. It's either going to break up or break down, I think. And that's got to happen probably this year. And if we can get interest rates a little bit lower, maybe below 6%, maybe 1% down, you'd see a lot of new money come in. You see the altcoin season happen. You see S&P 500 do well. Trump back in. I think the stars are aligning. I think the stars are aligning. If they're not aligning just yet, I think they'll align in the second half of this year, the last 6 months of this year, to kind of fulfill that. So yeah.
Interesting times, man. I'm just excited for some movement here in the market because we're at that point where everybody's like, poking Bitcoin with the stick, just being like, do something.
It really, I mean,
But don't go down.
we've been range bound for almost 3 months, really in that range since November. I've looked in the
Yeah.
past. It doesn't really go range bound for much more than 3 months ever. It's either going to
Yeah.
break up to like 115, 120, or it's breaking down to probably below the numbers. I mean, 86 at, probably the numbers you said, sadly, 70s, 67. What was
Yeah.
that number? I
Yeah.
think,
And go
go
ahead.
ahead. Well, I was going to say, I think most likely, I think you probably got it right. We could see some wicks down to scare people away. 86K. You could see the wick down to 19 something on ETH, but I don't think it would go much lower than that. Then you're kind of outside of the 4-year cycle. Then you got there's probably going to be some other unforeseen things happening if you do go that low. Something globally would probably have to happen. But you do have generally good things happening globally, maybe an end to Russia, Ukraine. We'll see what happens, maybe a ceasefire. That could be really good. I think the odds are in our favor. I think the odds are in our favor right now.
Yeah. No, I agree. And like I said, I'm not married to 86K by any means. It's just that's the key level at the moment to me that I won't be overlooking. Because I do think that if we see a pullback in Bitcoin, that's not a level that most people are going to be interested in. And for me, I'm not talking about buying Bitcoin at 86K either, but like it's more so for the altcoins, like to see, hopefully we see the support come in at that region. We see that 382, continuation, that retracing continuation from there. Because one thing that we see time and time again is, and if we didn't already get that drop in the alts, I would be on this camp too, that we would probably see a lower move in Bitcoin. But the way that the alts have already shifted, it's almost like like things have shifted hands already, and it's like ready for the next leg up. And when I look at Bitcoin, if we did drop a bit, it's like anything else, because if we drop just to 86, it's just below all those lows. It's going to look like it's breaking down, and just like we do every time, when you get that fake out of a high or a fake out of a low, everybody panic sells or enter shorts, or just gets really fearful or doesn't buy anything because they're afraid that it's going to go lower. Everybody's going to target that CME gap with 100% certainty, or back to the previous highs, which for good reason. I mean, it's the next support level. I'm just trying to make a case for why I think 86 is a strong contender, to be something we look for. And when I say 86, it's not like the exact level 86K, but like in general, we might, that's the area I'm looking to see if we wick through and we find support again and we start to bounce from. That's the one for me. That's like a big green light to see probably 150 Bitcoin. If I'm
That's
honest.
my big prediction, as I've talked about. If ETH can get up to at 7,400, maybe even 8K, Bitcoin I think would be at that big fib level, 150K. I would eye that. I would say you'd probably come up to maybe 120 by summer. Then you get a pullback back to maybe where we are right now, maybe a little bit above, and then hopefully in the second half of the year, one leg up to 150. I don't think you would go up to 180 or 200 like some people think. That's kind of my main view. What do you think is like the absolute max you can see Bitcoin going to this year, like December?
this year.
Like December, yeah, by December,
Yeah.
by January, let's say, by the end of the year, yeah.
So just based like, I'm in the same ballpark where I see like a move to like 120 to 140, probably by the
Mhm.
summertime. And then a pullback from there. And then, it's just one of those things where like, we have to obviously see how it looks when we get there. But if I'm just going off of like a straight, what if type of scenario, I do actually target the 170 to 180 area.
Mm.
Like pretty heavily for Bitcoin. But once again, we'll see how it all gets. I'm happy with a 140 or 152. Like it's what's another 30K amongst friends.
Yeah, yeah.
20%. Really, it's crazy when you think about that, right? Like because you
It's only
even if
yeah, it's only another 20%, yeah.
wild man,
Yeah,
$30,000, at some point potentially.
it's
I mean, even right
insane.
now, $30,000 is 30%. Yeah, from where we are now, like that's
It's such a large market cap at these points, yeah, it's such a large market cap. So I know you mentioned ETH is like your number one holding, at least right now. I think one of the last things I want to ask you, what's like a
Mhm.
number two holding? Like what's some altcoin, that you have a big, was it XRP, or I know you said you bought back in a lot of that. What are some altcoins you really like right now?
So one altcoin that is probably my second largest holding, but really not for any real reason. I managed to get into it at a really decent area, like 20. It's near protocol,
Oh, okay, yeah, I
and
know
so
there. Yeah.
so like I think it's got some good upside in the chart as far as like and I think that AI is kind of heavily wrapped around into it, but it's not been a huge performer by any means, but I
No.
did manage to get in at like $1. So it's just one of the things that
Okay.
I just kind of got in, and my entry's good, and I'm happy to hold it. I add to it on pullbacks, but as far as some other altcoins, I think that XRP, compared to other things, like obviously it's not the number one thing I jump into after a 50-cent rally
Mm,
to $3, but I do foresee. I did buy back into XRP at 181, like I said. So I will look to add anything under $2. I'm gonna find the XRP chart real quick, or a couple of them.
oh, okay.
Under $2 is probably good for XRP. I think $5 and $6 is on the docket for
That's what I exactly, yeah, that's my view, 5 to 6, yeah.
um, Ondo and Sui. I think kind of sometimes worries me how much other people are starting to talk on them. Not necessarily, I guess, because I mean Solana and all this had all their days.
Yeah.
But let me clean this up real quick. So I ended up selling out. I bought into Ondo around 69 cents. So it wasn't necessarily this, 50-cent low back in the day, and it ended up kind of coming back a little bit. But I ended up kind of getting it like 69 cents last summer.
Nice.
And I sold off at $2, even though Ondo
Wow.
is one that I do foresee having a pretty big upside. But the idea behind that was, once again, just we've all seen how this market just round trips time after time again, and eventually it breaks out, obviously.
Mm,
But for me, I as much as I can, man, if I'm up 200-300% at this point, because I got, what I say, 69-ish cents, let's just say
yeah, yeah.
70. The $2 spot, it was like 200-300%, give or take. It was like almost 200% move in just a few months. So I was happy with that, and I stashed it back because I'm always trying to stash cash for the crash, is kind of my little slogan.
Sure.
And because we always get a 40-50% pullback at some point. And if this continued to go up, it would have been whatever. I identified this potential shark, and the keyword really was potential. And it was at the highs here, right? So we came up and we took the
Mm,
highs at the time. This was back in December when everything was, really, really hopping. I didn't short this by any means, but I just I wanted to see a 50% retrace to this region.
nice.
And you see that we got it to the nuts there
So did
on that
you
last
bought
drop.
it, did you have limit orders there? How'd you do it? Did you buy?
Yeah, I just set limit orders, man, for the
Okay.
most part, for my spot bags. Like I'm
Okay.
not looking
Okay.
to rush to Coinbase or rush out, like, because these are, once again, this was like a Sunday, like,
Okay.
people were out at dinner. But I generally, like, I find key regions, and I just put stink bids, man. Like for spot. Like obviously I'm not presetting for like
Mm,
leverage positions. Like those are
sure.
always
Yeah, that's
taken as it comes, but and usually you don't have wicks into these areas. A
mm,
lot of times we'll find, region where you come into it. But Ondo, I do think is actually going to come down to my final area,
oh, wow,
like
okay.
the 75-cent region. And that's where I'm looking to really load the bag. If we get it, we might not, maybe this was the low, but once again, going off the idea that Bitcoin comes down to 40% drop from here, man, that would not be amazing. But yeah, then like 75 to $1, I'm happy to get Ondo. The next, leg up I see is obviously a new all-time high.
Hmm.
The target of this setup actually is from, this D point, potentially like 75 cents. And the main target is right above the previous high. So it's like from 75 cents to like 250 right off the rip.
Hmm.
So that's what I'll be looking for there, the next coming, and that's like midterm, like weeks and months. But I do like Ondo. I think it'll go higher than that even, but that's just like the short-term area. But buy zone, definitely 75 cents to $1 is where I'm getting in that
What's
width.
your
Go
like
ahead.
ideal, like what's your target that you would hope to see by the end of the year? Any big place where you would be like, okay, I'm selling, can it go up crazy? Could it go to $10? Could it go to $5? Any idea like that?
Yeah. Just off of, there's not too much data on it so far.
Hmm.
Let's just say it's bottomed out now. Um, for what I'd be looking at, I think it's one of those things that's going to end up like unfolding, right? So like, let's
Okay.
just pretend like, we kind of do one of these deals and you push up to, major fib level, and then you get a retracement, and then we can start kind of seeing where the next leg up would be. But I mean, from just, what'd you say, $10 or something?
Yeah, I was just pulling random numbers at him. It wasn't really no science behind that, but
Yeah. I mean, I think, yeah, like, 4 to 8, I think is definitely, a conservative. I haven't done too much, looking at the market cap and stuff like that. I know it's a big play with like
Mm,
BlackRock and, the Liberty Financial deal and whatever. So, that aside though, just looking at the technicals, I mean, yeah, this is what you want to see. You very rarely see this with new projects where you actually get, a sequence of higher highs, higher lows. I mean, so far this is just an up and to the right situation. It's one of the few that actually isn't just completely round tripping. So yeah, Ondo I think is one that's got some upside, and potentially way more than this. But just for now, I'd be taking it. That's a 400% move, 500 almost from the 75% entry. Sui is
mm.
another one. Let's just take a look at Sui real quick. So Sui is a similar, situation like Ondo, kind of just like an up and to the right situation. They're both new. It's only like kind of there's good and bad things that come from new projects because they have the most runway, I think, in the
Yeah.
beginning
Oh,
stages, just like Solana did and things like that. But just like Solana, right? Like it round tripped like a few $100 back to 8. So just be aware that is, definitely going to probably happen with all these as well at some point. If they do get a huge expansion, it's the
mm,
same as anything else that like at some point, the big boys are going to dump their bag on everybody. Sui was one that like front ran my little buy zone, which was literally by pennies here. Let's just
mm.
see, like a 3% move there. But once again, see if it comes back down to it. And for anybody looking, it's like $2 to 231. Right now it's at 346. Only way I would see that coming back now is if we had that drop in Bitcoin and and what have you. So, but it's about 30%. And the reason I say like even ETH is potentially set up to go to like 1900 and stuff like that is that was what a 26% drop. Sui front ran some key regions, which doesn't have to come back to him, but it's interesting because what happens here is that
Mm.
people will, even myself, right? Like somebody that's looking for an entry, misses it, and then you think it's running back up. So what am I going to do now? I'm going to buy up here, right? Like most people at least would,
Mm.
buying back up. And how much is
Sure.
this
I'm
up?
sure a lot of people are. Yeah. Yeah.
For sure. And overall, it might not be a terrible entry, definitely still better than when we were at $5. But, then that's when you see this just slow over time. You get one more little wick down, and then you get that
Mm.
move up. So I do anticipate coming back to this level. And the buy orders are sitting there. It's about 30% move. It's in line with, ETH. I think that's Solana. Not even think. Well, I think, once again, I don't know that this is going to unfold, but there's a
Mm.
really big setup here that has just been playing
Let's see
out.
this, yeah.
And I don't know why it's same deal as Bitcoin had. This is a bearish harmonic shark pattern is what it's
Mm.
called. Right at the previous all-time high. So imagine how many, got really excited as we were breaking that all-time high, hoping for this to be one of the few to get in the price discovery, only for it to just completely nuke back down. You got first target here, 0.5, kind of hugged it for a few
Mm.
days. Once again, no gold pocket support on this pattern, goes straight to the 886, which is where we've kind of gotten a little bounce from. And the amount of time we've been spending here now just makes me feel like we're going to see the last leg of this, which takes us to 153.
Okay, yeah. But it's
And there's
not
also
even that much. It's like 30%
no.
down. Yeah, it's not.
So
Yeah,
it's funny that that's what we're used to saying, like 30. That's actually not that much. It's only 20%. But
20.
yeah,
Yeah,
about 20, 26. When we were trading
yeah.
up here the other day, it was about a 30% drop.
Gotcha.
So, I feel like we're about 20, 30% away from key support for Solana. I feel like we're 20 to 30% away from key support on ETH. That Ondo chart was a little bit deeper because it's a little bit of a newer coin. Sui, about the same. I do think we probably get a little bit more down if we're gonna go
It
up
makes
into
sense.
like multi months. I think we're gonna see a little bit more, which is good for people, honestly. Like if you kind of can prepare for it ahead of time. The problem is a lot of people don't, right? And then when we do get these drops, everybody gets scared.
Mm,
And for good reason. I mean, like you got to take the risk, right? Like it's just for me, even for you, like there's times you just got to take. I actually took a short right at the high here,
mm.
and how when was this? No, I didn't actually. I'm sorry. I took it over here. It was when we came up the first time. It was in November, and we
Previous
pulled
all-time
back.
high. Yeah.
Yeah, it was the first time we just breached it, and I took the short. And I think there was actually another shark over here, which is interesting. But anyways, it was a
Yeah.
tough. It's only because I prepared for it, planned, whatever. It was like a 20. I don't think I held it all the way down to the low, but 25% move, whatever. But it took weeks to unfold. The market was
Wow.
super bullish, and it's to kind of like separate the emotion there. It's really hard. And then vice versa, anybody that's holding Solana, not that you should sell Solana for, your whole portfolio over 20% pullbacks, but it
Sure.
gets people really in their feels, man. Like if we get another 20, 30% drop, which this is now, if it happens, this is
Mm,
from the 20, it's really not that long, I guess, maybe a few weeks, but that's like a month and a half. And at the end of the day, what does it put us back to though? The same range we've been in since a year ago, actually. So this is, boring people out, I'm sure. When in reality, this might be, the area we kind of come down to again and, maybe get the XRP breakout. But yeah, I think that Solana comes down to like 140, which isn't too far away from where we are now. Near is one that, not many talk on it. Maybe it ends up being a nothing burger. For me, it's actually, like I said, my second biggest holding, just because of where I was able to get in at the time. Managed to get out and get in and get out and get in at some swing points, which has been, which is a successful move on my part. Not that it always happens like that, but trading at the bottom of a range, obviously with Bitcoin, if it does take another dip, I do imagine we'd pull back a little bit here. That just kind of got blown through. But yeah, overall, I anticipate at least some price recovery, right, instead of discovery, back up to some of these levels, man. I mean, you're talking, this has got some really big key points to come back to.
definitely. Yeah.
One of which being like $18 and stuff like that, and then maybe it breaches higher. But
That'd be nice. Yeah. 5x.
yes,
Yeah.
Near's a good one. For you want to get D-Jenny a little bit?
Yeah, a tiny bit. Yeah. Yeah. Sure. How
All
about?
right.
Yeah, you just one degen one, I guess. I mean, all those charts look the same to me usually, but yeah.
Yeah, this one
God,
isn't really like.
was it a video game? Video game gaming?
Yeah. This is one
Okay.
I've been, I only bring this up just because I'm just going to be interested to see if this one actually pops, because this is just sheer technical analysis, no fundamentals. I'm pretty sure this project is somewhat dead to most degrees, but
Yeah.
it's available on Coinbase. So that's always like something I look for, because it's like something that's available to everybody, for the most part, at least. And it's just been in this huge range for like ever, man. I mean, you're talking like since 2022. And if it does break out eventually, and I've thrown some beer, I call it beer money, because it's just something I'm willing to completely lose. But every time we come down to these lows, I toss, a little beer money into there. And the major target I have for this is all the way back up here, like $3, which would be like,
so
yeah, like a
30x.
30x now, like, which is wild to think.
Oh, have you
But
heard of that one, Virtual?
mhm.
That one, I think that one people have talked about, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's Virtuals is a good one too. I think it is. It's a high risk-ish, compared to some other
Yeah,
things, but
definitely. And it already went parabolic, kind of. Yeah.
right. Man, I did not realize we've been going on so long, buddy. I'm
We've
sorry.
been going on a while. I think that's like, yeah, I think if we go on any more, it's just gonna, yeah,
We're gonna be on a podcast for all day.
yeah, it's like Joe Rogan, 3 hour or whatever. But any parting words for the people? Any parting words for, let's see, any other things you wanted to mention that you may have not mentioned already?
I think we covered just about everything, man. Always a pleasure. Hope everybody's enjoying their time. I see you traveling, man. It's good to see. You enjoying the freedom that we have in this world.
Yeah, will you be
Um,
at Bitcoin 2025 Las Vegas? I'll be there.
I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
It's my wife's birthday around that time, so I think we have
Okay.
another thing planned out. But yeah,
Gotcha.
if it aligns, it's sick that it's in Vegas.
Yeah.
It's cool. But yeah, otherwise, man, always a pleasure, buddy. Thank you so much for having me, and
Yeah.
looking forward
And
to
where should
see.
people find you? Where should people, if they want to find out more from CVO Crypto?
The best thing, I just refer everybody to Twitter.
Okay.
Got a link tree in there, so it's just under CVO Trading, and then yeah,
I got
it
the
has
link
like
down below.
YouTube and all the good stuff. So if you want to come hang,
Cool. So thanks so much, man. Guys, smash the like button. Check out CVO's Twitter, his YouTube channel as well, and TikTok, whatever. And yeah, I'll see you soon, buddy.